Diego Pacheco defeats Steve Nelson. Terrence Crawford's homie. It's a 12-rounder. And I'm here to give you guys my official boxing ego breakdown. What really happened? Starters, let me just say that as a fight, it was mid. It was a mid fight. It was cool. Like, it wasn't like, you watch boxing where you're like, oh, I wasted my time. Nothing like that. So it was a solid fight. It's not too much to break down, but I will give you guys my breakdown. Now, the first 3 rounds, I want to say, Steve Nelson came out pretty sharp, using some movement, and I think the tension from the build-up and the mind games, these types of things, it had Diego Pacheco just on his P's and Q's. He didn't want to make too many mistakes early, and I appreciate him for that because he is ranked highly with most of the sanctioning bodies. If you don't get past the Steve Nelson, you're definitely not getting Canelo fights. You might not get a Canelo fight anyway, but if you lose to Steve Nelson, you're definitely not getting that. So I think Diego Pacheco, he started off slow, kind of taking his time and overall boxing more, whereas Steve Nelson, he came out faster. Now, on my breakdowns, I give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, for Steve Nelson, he didn't get knocked out, and he showed a lot of heart. That's the biggest thing that stood out, is he showed when he was down, the chips were down. To me, this wasn't a close fight at all, and it was really easy to score. There was a nasty cut that I believe a right hand opened up. Diego Pacheco caught him, and there was a nasty cut that was bleeding into Steve Nelson's eye. And if you go follow my Twitter on social media, when I was giving my round by round, I said that it looks to be bothering Steve Nelson, and all that like pep in his step and where he was crescendoing, all that died out in that 4th round when that cut opened up, and he literally nosedived, and his energy level, his the bounce in his step, all of these things to me waned, and they were completely, to me, it was completely obvious that he was affected by the cut, or it was mentally messing with him. And post-fight, he confirmed what I was saying in real time on my Twitter, said he started seeing yellow, and it kind of took him out of his game plan. That was apparent. Now, I'm not here to make excuses. I don't need to make excuses for the fighter. So who knows if it would have been different or worse. That's just what went on. After round 4, to me, Nelson, he didn't really do that much. And Diego Pacheco, he was landing. I want to say round 7. I don't have all my rounds memorized, but I think round 7 was an excellent Pacheco round. And there were some moments where he was landing bombs on Steve Nelson. Like, bop, he had a left, and his whole head like twisted like the Exorcist almost. And, somehow, some way, Nelson is tough as nails, and he was standing up to the power in those shots from Pacheco. However, the downside for Nelson is it's cool to show a beard, but I always say on my channel, if you're known for showing a beard, you're going to have a shorter lifespan and shelf life in boxing. Floyd says it too. The least punishment you take in the sport, the longer you last. And the fact that we know that Steve Nelson has a beard, to me, is at age 36, he'll probably be 37 this year. That's actually kind of a bad thing for the future of his career. Now, it got you through this fight, but at age 36, 37, pushing 40, you don't want to be in these types of wars. He already had an injury, I think his Achilles or something. So problems with your legs. They said he had issues outside of the ring. He had maybe 3 fights since 2020, right? And they were like lower tier until this Diego Pacheco one. You get to this moment and you convincingly lose. Plus you pick up a cut, which, you get scar tissue, things like that. And his legs looked real stiff in the second half of the fight. And what I'm talking about, he nosedived. After round 4, his energy levels like completely dropped. All of the movement and the bounce he had, which was giving Diego issue in the first 3 rounds, was gone. It was in sync. Gone. Girl, you gone. Baby, you're gone. It was just gone. And that's when Pacheco had his best moments. And, it looked like he was nearing a potential stoppage, at least a knockdown. Bomac sounded more panicked in the corner. I give props to Bomac for that, because Terrence Crawford's trainers, Bomac, he also trains Nelson and Keyshawn. He kept it real with his fighter. So I love to see that, love to hear that, keeping it real with the fighter. And they were saying, hey, he's you walking on the shots. He hitting you with too much. He's clearly winning these rounds. You got to do something. Are you good? Are you okay? And in these mid rounds, they had to breathe new life into Steve Nelson, because I'm telling you, there was moments where he was looking real deflated in that corner. And I think I even have a screen grab, like this. He was walking back to his corner. You see his eye, he's all bloodied up. And there's one round he was walking back after whatever, it was a bad round for him. And it looked like Pacheco was getting busy and landing combos, vicious hooks, uppies. And Nelson went back to his corner, took a deep breath, like in, and he just stood there and he looked super deflated. And they're like, come on, what are you doing? Sit down. Like, you got a minute to get your cut looked at. And he just looked totally deflated. But he did show heart, and he did show some resolve in getting through this and still trying to make it a show. 12th round, very fun round, because Nelson knew he was down bad. He had, I guess, tried to come up with the set. See, this is where he's looking deflated. You see, he looking kind of deflated in some of these rounds. But 12th round, he came out and he knew he was down big, so he was willing to go out in his shield. You got to respect that from a fighter, somebody being willing to leave it all in the ring. So I don't have anything real bad to say about Pacheco or Nelson. Again, it was kind of a mid cool fight, nothing too high, nothing too low. My only, I guess, criticisms, Nelson, he did everything he could do, all things considered. He clearly was in some type of shape. He was in some type of shape. Not surprising. He works with Crawford, and, they run him through their paces. So he did as much as he could do. It was just came up short. And he showed respect and class post-fight and had that 12th round where he tried to rally back. But all in all, again, I don't know where you go from here, which I'll save in a second. But so for the bad, I guess if I have to say some bad, for Pacheco, I picked him. If you guys go to my social media, you'll see the prediction. I talked to a lot of you guys about the fight. I'm not just on one platform. I'm multi-platformed. Use the link in the description to get Boxing Ego in your life. I'm the best in the business, and it's not even close. I picked Pacheco by TKO, and I got the person right method. He was tougher than expected, but I truly think that Pacheco could have gotten the stoppage. He just would have had to handle it a little bit different. So my only, I guess, criticism is there were moments where Pacheco, you could tell he's young and he's not fully versed and experienced, because he had all the tools to force a TKO, and I think he should have got aggressive. I was saying that in real time on my Twitter, that if you have a dead man, and by dead man, I'm saying somebody in there is not really doing much, you're getting the best of them, you can oftentimes smartly, I'm not saying just go in there windmilling and then, get knocked out, but smartly put your punches together, put your combinations. You're 6'4", you're younger, you have him kind of cornered, his energy dipped and waned. He seemed out of the fight. He was walking back looking discouraged. So I kind of blame Diego Pacheco and maybe Benavidez, his trainer, in this specific moment. I think they should have put in those middle rounds, like after round 7 or 8, whatever the worst round was for Nelson, I think they should have really tried to put it on Nelson in a smart way, and I think they could have at least got a knockdown or forced a stoppage. Listen, I watched boxing my whole life. I respect the sport. There's only so much punishment anybody's going to take, and I think he had the tools. So post-fight, you heard Pacheco, and Pacheco was like, I'm kind of disappointed with my opponent. I mean, with my performance. I could have done more, but, it is what it is. Eddie Hearn also said post-fight he's seen Pacheco sharper, and I would have to agree. It wasn't a horrible performance, but you could have really made a statement to the division here, and I think he had all the tools. He just didn't put it together quite right, and some of it goes to Nelson just being tough because other fighters might not have been able to take those shots. Now, for the ugly, DAZN commentary is terrible. They have a bunch of side conversations and chatter and like inside jokes like, oh, Sergio Mora is sick. He's not going to be on the telecast. I hate Sergio. Ha, ha, ha. Like, we are boxing fans. I don't even like Sergio Mora's his commentary, so that was a blessing for him not to be on it. And I don't care to really hear all these sidebar like antics, especially when it's not even funny. Oh, Sergio's a snake. I don't want to see him on the telecast. Like, bro, you guys are spending time talking about an announcer who's not announcing tonight. You know what I mean? So that is one thing, just the side conversation. But even from a boxing perspective, it's like they do too much. And I don't like commentary. And if you notice my style, when I do my watch parties, the best in the business, and it's not even close to boxing, you go watch parties. I'm never too high. I'm never too low. I'm always right there in pocket, somewhere in the middle. So I hate in commentary in boxing all the super yelling, like, oh, he's hurt, and then the person lasts 12 rounds. It's just too dramatic and radical. I also dislike the commentary like what I heard on DAZN tonight, where Steve Nelson, he told you, like, he's Mexican, he's been branded well, he got a fan base, he can bounce back from a loss. I'm 36 from Omaha, it's different. I need this win, right? So everybody kind of bought into this. I don't factor none of that type of stuff into my predictions. That's why my prediction streak is A-OK, like when I picked Pacheco and he won, right? DAZN, they were talking about like, oh, Steve Nelson, I don't know, Pacheco, he needs to do something. And it was like the third round or so. You know what I mean? The first 3 rounds, you got to let people work into their game plan. They were making it like Pacheco was getting bodied. And for real, despite me saying earlier that Nelson came out sharp and fast, offensively, he wasn't crushing Pacheco. He had a lot of movement and feints and like he was just busy, but he wasn't like bing, 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 mink, mink, mink. And then like Pacheco's head is pinballing. It wasn't nothing like that. And they made this big hoopla and a big deal about it. And ultimately, it wasn't all that. Pacheco was just taking his time. He didn't want to run into anything foolish. He wanted to see what, this is a good like not crossroad, but fight to get me bumped to the next level. So he just took his time and he boxed instead of coming like wild and then getting clipped with something when the guy's fresh. So I didn't like the commentary at all. I thought Pacheco boxed fine. And you've seen, like I said, round 4 or 5, Pacheco started turning up the heat. Then the cut happened. And then all of a sudden, everything you said in the first 3 rounds, now because you did too much, becomes a moot point and null and void. It's like all that stuff you were saying, like, oh, but Nelson is just deuced. Nelson. That's all I kept hearing was it's a fight. 2 guys undefeated. It's a fight. It's supposed to be like nip tuck and this, that, like that's what happens in a fight. But I thought they were overplaying it, making it sound like Nelson was in like dominating control. They were even saying like they were doing scorecards and the scorecards were like, he won the first 5 rounds. Like, I'm like, what are we talking about? I didn't see all that. I seen Nelson came out. He had some energy. He had some pep in his step, some bounce. He was trying to get something going. And like I said, you let an older fighter burn that off, burn that excess energy, and box smartly, use your power, maybe even be economical. It's a 12-round fight. So you're not Mike Tyson. You don't have to get a first-round knockout. And that's what Pacheco did. But by round 4 and 5, the game plan started to develop, cut happened, and between the shots, the singles that Pacheco was landing, the cut, and natural fatigue, Nelson started to flatten out. And once he started to flatten out, we've seen Pacheco's skill set really show. So, I'm not going to – Pacheco's young. He has a lot that, he's going to learn in a fight like this. He'll learn a lot from it. But he clearly, to me, dominated the fight. And you guys who watch boxing or other commentators, they start giving a bunch of props. Boxing is very easy if you know what you're looking at. Who's winning the rounds? Who wins the most out of 12? Take all the emotional, like the 12th round. Oh, yeah, he's trying. Because there was another round like that where late in the fight, Steve Nelson was like trying to get something done. But then in that round, you had Diego Pacheco land 3, like in a short order, 3 uppies that were disgusting and huge. And for me, I feel like those 3 uppercuts in that round were more impactful than every shot that Steve Nelson landed in that round 8. Pacheco was like, whop, and then hit him with a swiping left hook. Pacheco's, when he was punching, his punch selection was beautiful and they were more impactful. So I don't get like this. People treat boxing like Creed or a Rocky movie. Like, yeah, he's going for it. That don't have nothing to do with scoring the rounds though, And the second half of the fight, I just think that Pacheco, he just started to pull away and show separation. I think it was round 11 where Pacheco said, ha, 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 had 3 uppercuts in like 30, 40 seconds. And that was better than anything that Steve Nelson did in the round to me. So it's not far-fetched to give Pacheco that round, but people go off emotion. So they're like, oh, Nelson tried for it. So, yeah, I'm going to give him round 11. But no punch he landed was better than those fights. No punch was as impactful. Like, Nelson, make no mistake about it, he showed heart, but he was getting stood up. Like, his legs looked stiff and he was standing up. He was just taking it, but I still got to score for the guy who's inflicting that. Like, there's guys who have a beard, but you could tell they're getting punished. His eye was swelling, cut, bleeding, so I really didn't like the DAZN commentary. I never really liked the DAZN commentary. They really need to scrap it and start over, because it takes away from the fights to me because I know what I'm looking at, But that's my little rant. Good, solid win for Diego Pacheco. He advances. For Steve Nelson, the ugly for him is at age 36, 37, where do you go from here? You've had inactivity, you stepped up in class, and then kind of got punished, lost. Terrence Crawford's at the end of his career. So how many more fights is he going to, like, let's say Crawford fights Canelo. Are they going to put you on the undercard in September? You know what I mean? Coming off this performance, do you have cuts and injuries that need to heal? Are you ready? Are you mentally ready? And the bad thing for Nelson, too, is at his age, with his level of activity, stepping up to Pacheco and coming up wild short, even the scorecards kind of showed that, is when you put on a performance where you're showing that much heart and rallying and trying to get things to go your way, all that to lose, that is insanely discouraging because you probably had a great training camp. He said he was in the best shape of his life. He did this whole like Creed speech monologue where he was like, man, I'm 36 from Omaha. I got to win this one. Like, there's no going back. He's Mexican. He can bounce back. He's young. Eddie Hearn can take care of him, put him. I need this. So you did all that, but then you still lost. So at the end of the day, it's like, where do you go from here? Like, are they going to give you a Edgar Berlanga or are you going to get an Mbili? And then how many wars do you have in you when you took a lot of punishment in this particular fight? So those are my questions, but time will reveal and answer that. All in all, I think it was sturdy. performance by Pacheco and a solid fight. And that's what really happened. For more boxing content, do not be a stranger. Subscribe to my channel now. I have official breakdowns like this and much more content coming in 2025. Deuces.